So, how did you bring that as a theme to your documentary, and why did you think that was important?
Well, I think once you go to these festivals and, you see people dressing up as characters or where they're, talking about a show from the 1960s, how much they love it. And, they just kind of miss, that, I guess that kind of feeling, you realize, okay, this is a very nostalgic thing for these people. And, and then it's, it starts thinking about, well, what makes you nostalgic? What makes me nostalgic? What I look back on and I enjoy. And so, it you you start going down that rabbit hole, and then you start thinking, I started thinking, what's the psychology behind, nostalgia? Like, where does it come from? Why is it, why does it hit us the way it does? And so, the more you watch the TV show, the more you're around these group of people, you realize that when they're coming to Mayberry Days for the festival for a week, they leave in a much happier state. So they're not only nostalgic at the festival, but then they're pretty nostalgic when they leave for a couple weeks afterwards. And they've created new memories to become nostalgic back on later on. And so, it's a nice cycle, but it's almost kind of helping, like, I think all of us use nostalgia as a way of life to cope with things in life.
Hmm.
And so what's interesting was the two professors that I interviewed in the documentary both live in England. And so Dr. Constantine Siddiquides is originally from Greece. He ended up teaching at Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill,
Wow.
and watched the Andy Griffith Show when he taught there. And Dr. Tim Wildschut, he was under Dr. Constantine Siddiquides at Chapel Hill, and he's from the Netherlands. And he too watched the Andy Griffith Show. So when I went to England to interview them about the psychology of nostalgia, they were the only two people in the world that, hey, had lived in North Carolina, understood about Andy Griffith, had watched the Andy Griffith Show, and then studied nostalgia. So they could talk
Wow.
about not only, the TV show itself and what it made them feel, but why we process the way we process. And the big takeaway for me from that meeting was nostalgia is not necessarily all about the past, but some of it's about the future. And so when we look at it that way, you know, I have two daughters. And when we do fun events, I know later on we're going to look back on those two, those fun events very nostalgically. And so, I think we're able to use it to look into the future and kind of help us navigate the future as well. So it's very, very powerful. It's a very, very powerful motion. And, you look at the world differently, I think, when you think